If you guys watch my videos, you'll know that I'm a very big Final Fantasy fan. A fanboy, but not a militant one. You see, we Final Fantasy fans get a hard time these days, mainly due to some bad eggs not being able to accept other people's opinions. Well, I say don't focus on those people, focus on the games themselves. And with that in mind, I, Terra Corrupt, present to you the top 10 Final Fantasy games including the spin-offs. When series creator Hironobu Sakaguchi left Square in 2001, the company would have to continue without its master. Thus, we see Final Fantasy XII and XIII, two games which almost made it but sadly are the subject of much debate and criticism. Final Fantasy XII was directed by Yasumi Matsuno, the creator of games like Final Fantasy Tactics Advance and Vagrant Story. The game had addictive gameplay, a sprawling, fully explorable world, and fantastic music that set the mood. Final Fantasy XIII, on the other hand, had an enthralling story, complicated characters, and fantastic visuals. If we were to put both games together, we would see a truly unforgettable experience. Part of the compilation of Final Fantasy VII, Dirge of Cerberus is a shoot-'em-up in which you play as Vincent Valentine, 3 years after the events of the original Final Fantasy VII. The game received a lot of criticism and negative reviews, but I thoroughly enjoyed this game. Sure, it's not perfect, well, no game is, and making a follow-up to one of the most praised games of all time certainly isn't going to be easy. But if you can appreciate the game for what it is, then you'll find a story that's filled with mystery and surprise. Also, if you listen closely, you'll see that I got my username from this game.
Soul Rot of Terra Corrupt.
A game that wasn't released to English-speaking audiences for some time, Final Fantasy III is a simple crystal tale told in the best way Square knows how to. 4 warriors of light, 4 crystals, a dark fate, and the light of hope. The game that defines the true spirit of Final Fantasy, however, is not for the casual. You'll find that a lot of grinding, tactics, and Phoenix Downs are essential if you're going to beat this monster. Definitely an old-school Final Fantasy for a new generation. Yes, we're all very aware of the Charlie's Angels jokes. Let's leave them at the door. Now, while the story isn't anything spectacular, Final Fantasy X-2 has, in my opinion, one of the best battle systems ever to come out of a Final Fantasy game. A job system combined with a fully functional ATB gauge, changeable in battle. Awesome. The sequel to Final Fantasy X, it tells the story of Yuna 2 years after the events of 10, as she searches the world for Tidus with her friends Riku and Pain. Add a clever mission system and chapter-based gameplay and you've got yourself a pretty solid spin-off. How do you trump Final Fantasy VII? Well, for a start, improve the graphics. Introduce an all-new junction system and include full motion video. Okay, the junction system wasn't that great, but still, for those faithful to the series, Final Fantasy VIII did not disappoint. In one of the most bizarre plot changes in gaming history, you go from being a student at an academy to a time-traveling assassin. No, I'm not kidding. Add some of the best music we've heard by Nobuo Uematsu, a subplot involving the Galabadian army, and a very addictive card game. It is a heavy game, not for those who get deterred easily. Definitely an acquired taste. But once you've got it, you will not forget it. The reason I don't have this in my list is that I haven't played it legally yet, only via an emulator, and I feel it would be unfair to include it on this list. The only 2 games in the series I have not finished yet. Be sure, I will update my top 10 once I finish Dawn of Souls. When the Super Nintendo was released, Square was keen on showing just what it could do with the extra power. Of course, I wouldn't know. Final Fantasy IV, or 2, or whatever you want to call it, was never released in Europe. That was until the ports of the PlayStation, Game Boy Advance, and the DS. I swear this game is everywhere. As a result, it's hard to miss. 4 tells the story of Cecil, a dark knight who begins to question his king. As you travel, you meet many colourful characters who all come and go as they please. Yes, that includes that spoony bard. The first game to have the ATB battle system, Final Fantasy IV is the only game in the series to have 5 characters in battle, as well as 3, count them, 3 overworld maps. Yep, it's about all you need to make a good Final Fantasy. In quite possibly the riskiest move made by Square, after the success of Final Fantasy VIII and VII, they decided to pay homage to the Final Fantasies of the Nintendo and the Super Nintendo by going back to that style. Sakaguchi's personal favourite game sees you as a thief who kidnaps a princess, but soon finds himself part of a much bigger plot involving a man in a dress. Sorry, Kuja. Some have said that Final Fantasy IX is the perfect Final Fantasy, and it's hard to disagree. Pretty much everything is right with this game. A great story, fantastic music, full motion video, simplistic combat system. Yep, it's all is good here. You can't go wrong with this gem of a game. And the best thing is, it's on the PSN for only €10. Now buy it! Final Fantasy had finally arrived on a new console, and a new millennium. In Sakaguchi's final Final Fantasy game, he wanted to bow out in the best way, by making one of the most cinematic, plot-based stories ever seen in a Final Fantasy. You play as Tidus, or Tidus, or whatever you want to say, who was swept back in time 1,000 years, but instead of hitting the drink, he decides to become a guardian to the summoner Yuna, as she tries to destroy Sin, a big fish thingy. But don't let my vague description put you off. Final Fantasy X has one of the most immersive worlds ever seen in gaming, one in which you learn all you can about the people in it and the places itself. It also has possibly the best soundtrack I've ever heard in all of gaming, period. Just try not to focus too much on the voice acting. Yeah, the big one. You know, there's a reason why Final Fantasy VII is so critically acclaimed and so constantly bashed by haters. It's a really good game. Not even a Final Fantasy, a game. But combine a good game with the name Final Fantasy and you've got one of the greatest games of all time. You play as Cloud, an ex-soldier. Hey, why am I telling you this? You wouldn't even have clicked on this video if you didn't know at least a brief outlook on this story. Square's first 3D game boasted a totally different look than its predecessors, instead taking advantage of Tetsuya Nomura's manga style. The battle system works, the FMV was unheard of at the time, and yes, Ares. One of the first games that convinced me that games could be something more than mild entertainment. Final Fantasy VII certainly deserves its title as one of the greatest video games of all time. Let's hit the recap. At number 10 it's Final Fantasy XII and XIII. At number 9 it's Dirge of Cerberus. At number 8 it's Final Fantasy III. At number 7 it's Final Fantasy X-2. At number 6 it's Final Fantasy VIII. In at number 5 is Final Fantasy IV. At 4 is Final Fantasy IX. At number 3 is Final Fantasy X. And at number 2 is Final Fantasy VII. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you my favorite game. A mysterious girl who's lost her memory. A group of rebels fighting against an oppressive empire. A maniacal general bent on torture and sadism. These are just some of the things to expect when experiencing this masterpiece. So what makes this game so great? Is it the vast cast of characters? Its character customization? Its gargantuan story? Its ahead of its time graphics? Its excellent music? I'll tell you why this game works. It's because everything flows into place like a perfectly crafted jigsaw puzzle. There's no emphasis on any part of the game. It's all fantastic. If you're a fan of Final Fantasy and haven't played this game yet, I strongly recommend it to you, and to anyone who dares call themselves a gamer.